Hey, if you're in here because you want to hear me say more things out loud in public, then take a seat. And if not, find somewhere else to be. Your loss. Hilarious that you all want to come do this again. This is going to be way different, by the way, than what we have been doing. The title is Living Virtuously in the Gray Areas. The full title is Living Virtuously in the Gray Areas, How to Pursue Bioethical Decision Making when there's not a verse for that. Now, here's why we're doing this. Biblically focused. Hopefully you're all persuaded, again, we should be doing that. But I believe in the sufficiency of Scripture and its inspiration and all those other big words that you're supposed to learn at seminary. But I wanted to do this one on purpose, having done those 3 sermons, because sometimes we can fall into the trap of believing that as long as we believe the Bible, then all we have to do is find a verse and just read the verse, proof text, ta-da. I want you to think of what verse might be appropriate for this situation. I'm going to read something. And we'll go from here. It's kind of long, but this is going to frame why this hour is important. Eleanor is a 63-year-old woman who collapsed while teaching preschoolers Sunday school 3 days ago and has been found to have a large left intercerebral hemorrhage with extension both into the subarachnoid space, fluid-filled space between the brain and the skull, and the ventricle in the center of her brain. She has an emergent surgical evacuation of the blood clot, and her level of recovery is minimal. As expected, she is still slowly improving. She's on a minimal ventilator to help her breathe, and she is making some purposeful movement. In spite of this, she is felt to have very poor prognosis. Dr. Plumley believes her best possible outcome would be survival with right-sided paralysis and difficulty with both speech and comprehension. On examination, she is intubated, having what appears to be seizure activity, and she withdraws from any physical contact. The patient has no written advance directive. After a family conference yesterday, husband, 2 daughters, and a sister, a do not resuscitate order was written. On the basis of her previously expressed wishes, her family also requested withdrawal of her current support, a request her surgeon feels is premature. He would prefer to wean her from the ventilator, and he would be less uncomfortable accepting a decision to not reuse it if she should deteriorate again. He is somewhat concerned that the family may be making this choice because the patient has no health insurance. The patient has been disabled for 10 or 12 years from arthritis, and for the past few years has been able to walk only short distances with a cane, using a wheelchair most of the time. She's been in a lot of pain, including significant headaches, but she has avoided physicians for 20 years. Her family reports that she has said for 20 years that she did not want aggressive medical treatment, and she specifically did not want to be on life support, even short term. They believe the basis for this request is A, a strong religious Pentecostal belief that God is in charge and will decide whether she lives or dies, and B, a significant aversion to being touched by anyone. She has been cared for at home by her husband, but insists on maintaining as much independence as possible because she does not want to be a burden. Some in the family believe she would have refused the surgery that had already been done, and all agree she would not want her current levels of support, nor to be dependent on others, even if her stroke had less pessimistic prognosis. They also believe she would find rehabilitation therapy to be intolerable because of the necessity for physical touch. One daughter, who is estranged, is coming in from out of state and has said on the phone that she wants the treatment to continue. They call you as the pastor and say, what should we do? Anybody got a verse for that? Yeah, call the chaplain. I want to be clear, there's no easy decision there. And in case you're like, wow, that sounds bizarre. I'll never face anything like that. It just shows you've not been a pastor for long enough, because you absolutely will. And you'll face it in your own family. Now, a discussion could be had in this hour about what kind of outcomes we should pursue in a situation like that. And that would be of some but very limited benefit. Before all of that can take place, we should think about what we can do now as we prepare for a situation like that. So both the considerations today and the decisions we have to make in the moment belong to the study of what we call bioethics, which is very simply the study relating to moral discernment about medical policy and practice. In other words, thinking carefully about how we should be born, how we should live, and how we should die well. So you go, okay, why are we doing this? And who are you to be talking about this? Well, I got a master's in bioethics from Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, and I'm doing a PhD in Theological Ethics, and everybody asks me the question, why aren't you doing it on preaching? There's a couple answers to that. Number one, because preaching, academic study of preaching is super boring. And the other one is because I don't want to do it. And somebody's got to study bioethics, because everybody's born, everybody lives, and you're all going to die. So the question is, how can we be thoughtful in figuring out how to approach all of this? The problem is that there's way too much to consider, and it gets overwhelming. And this is common, and it leads people to do nothing until the situation hits. It goes, I'll make the decision of whether to pull the plug when they call me and ask me, should we pull the plug? That, my friends, is the height of foolishness. So the study of bioethics, especially for Christians and especially for Christian leaders, is to help us be shaped ourselves and shape our people to be the right kinds of people to make the right kinds of decisions. The thing I appreciate the most about bioethics is, ordinarily, there are no good answers. There are multiple better answers and multiple worse answers in any given situation. So how can we think about this well today in light of our unknown tomorrows? And we don't do it by examining particular cases. Rather, we should think about what kind of people we should be. Thus, the idea of living virtuously. Now, the virtues are sadly one of the most neglected topics in Christian formation, at least in Protestantism. This is one place where the Catholics have got us beat big time. There's lots and lots of terrible things about the Catholic Church, but especially their thinking in relation to the virtues in the Christian life, they are particularly helpful. So what are virtues? It's a word that kind of we use every once in a while. If you had to define it, by the way, this is all going to be like all of us talking together from here on. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? You don't have to give a tight definition. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word virtue? Huh? Purity, good. Character, godly character, righteousness. That's pretty good. Better than normal. Technically, it is a character trait that orients or disposes a person to act in a good way. So when you think about the virtues, it's something that I'm pursuing that leads me to kind of react in the right kind of way, a good, a wise, we would say, godly, as Christians, kind of way. What's the opposite of a virtue? Vice. Exactly. Here's the tricky part about being a human. At every moment in your life, you are either becoming virtuous, or more vicious. There's no morally neutral act in the universe. But most of this formation is not stuff that happens to us consciously, subconscious. Let me give you an example of this. You're in a conversation, and somebody asks you a question, and you have to answer that question. Some of us are not very good at telling the truth. So, we either tell a lie or flinch toward the lie, correct, and tell the truth. Now, Aristotle, the wise pagan, had the best idea about this, where he said, okay, so imagine that this is pure virtue over here, and this is pure vice over here. Nobody ever gets to either of those two poles, but we're always moving in a certain direction. So again, somebody asks me a question, and let's say this is lying, and this is truth-telling. Truth-telling is virtuous. Lying is vicious. Let's say that I haven't been doing so hot lately. I'm lying more and more often. Little white lies. But I keep finding myself lying. You know what happens the more you lie? The more you lie. In other words, you might tell the truth, but you have to flinch a little harder and turn away a little more from the lying. Now, the good news is, you know what happens the more you tell the truth? The more you tell the truth. You're killing it over there. Not necessarily drinking things, but answering questions. Yeah. And this is the good news. The more you tell the truth, the easier it is to tell the truth. Because your gut reaction, the virtue of truth-telling is being formed in you. And it doesn't mean that you'll always tell the truth. You'll still lie, even if you're over here. But you find it easier to do. You go, okay, so what? Well, bioethics is interesting because it's mainly discussions about what kind of decisions to make. But again, there aren't very many right and wrong decisions. There's better and worse decisions. And so if we engage in the process of formation in the virtues, then we will be the kinds of people that will be disposed to make better kinds of decisions. Simple as that. Now, of course, that's super complicated. But as I hope you'll see, we're going to do a lot of work in the Bible. As I hope you'll see, all it really is engaging in discipleship with people and teaching people to live in light of who God is. That's all this really is, but doing it in a thoughtful way. So, this morning we're going to look at one virtue, but I hope you'll see that none of the virtues stand alone. They're all interrelated, which will probably become clear as we go along. The virtue we're going to look at today is the virtue of faith. So get your Bibles out. We're going to be using these for the rest of the time. Somebody please read 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 13. This is where we find what are classically called the three cardinal virtues. Right here. Somebody read it out loud. All right. What are the three cardinal theological virtues? Faith, hope, and love. See, you're crushing it. Like, you now have arrived at like the brightest thing that Thomas Aquinas ever came up with. He's just reading the Bible. So, it would be very helpful to think about hope and bioethical decision making and love, and bioethical decision making, but we're not going to do that. It would also be helpful to think about 3 other very important virtues when it comes to bioethics, those being courage, not only courage, but also contentment and constancy, or stick-with-itness. But we don't have time to do that. It would take at least 6 hours to do that, but it would really take 6 days, but it could take 6 weeks, and the reality is it could take the rest of our lives. But these are the kinds of things we need to be thinking about shaping our people in. And this is going to be helpful for you, because I don't know about you, but I'm all about discipleship too. I think we all are. And then everybody's like, discipleship, what the heck are we supposed to do? We're trying to form people in faith, in hope, in love. Not just that they believe that's a thing or that they quote-unquote have it, but that they are constantly pursuing it in order to be the right kinds of people God wants his people to be. And we're going to see how this helps us in bioethical decision making. So, we're going to look at 3 things this morning. I want to look at faith as a concept, faith as a virtue, and then the application of faith to bioethics. Okay? Faith as a concept, faith as a virtue, and then its application to bioethics. That's what we're going to do. So let's think about faith as a concept. Every single human lives their lives in large part on the basis of faith. I'm not saying Christians. I mean, we're just going to talk about concept, broad level. Okay? And we're going to use the very complicated example of this cup right here. Okay? This is it. Now, faith consists of 3 parts, all 3 of which are necessary, 2 of which are necessary but not sufficient. You got to have all of them. So let's think about the first one. In order to have faith, we have to first have knowledge. Okay? Why is knowledge so important for faith? Something to believe in. Otherwise, it's just guesswork. Yeah, and even if it's guesswork, it's like, I don't even know what I'm guessing about. Right? So I have to have knowledge. You go, okay, this sounds real complicated. So glad I decided this breakout session. I have to have knowledge. You go, what does that have to do with the coffee cup? I have to know that there is this thing in the world called cups. And that what cups do is that, like, what do cups do? They hold a beverage. Is it always a beverage? No. What else could it be? Now we know who's getting diabetes up in here. Yeah, candy. Yeah. Dude, it's not even like noon and you're like, candy. All right, so beverage, candy. What else? Cheerios. Pencils. Great. It could hold all kinds of things. By the way, what's the size of a cup? They vary. Exactly. So it's, if I'm hearing you right, it's a container that holds things. Right? Great. It could hold all kinds of things. Now, in this case, I'm thinking about a coffee cup. So we're back to the beverage thing. So a coffee cup is a particular kind of cup, because if I have a cup for pencils, what kind of cup could I have for pencils that wouldn't work for coffee? Yeah, one of those like trendy ones, right? Like it's got holes in it. It's still technically a cup, and we might be like, I have a different definition of cup. That's not a cup, that's a basket. Great. I mean, because I don't know if you've ever tried to put coffee in one of those mesh holders, but it ain't going to work. Still, this is like the question of like whether a hot dog is a sandwich. It's a taco. That was way too quick. You've thought about this way too much. That's right. Yeah. It's a good conversation. Now, the knowledge of this thing is super important because we have to have a discussion about it, so we're not just guessing or like, I don't know. So the knowledge is important. But is knowledge all we need for faith? Nope. Why not? it doesn't produce any action. It's just receiving something about this thing called a cup or a taco or whatever, a meat taco, and you're like, okay, cool, like, great. So we need knowledge, but added to knowledge, we need what we would call assent. In other words, not only do I have the knowledge of what you say a coffee cup is, but I need to give my assent to that thing. In other words, I believe that that thing could possibly exist. The coffee cup. Now, why is assent so important? Okay, great. Yes. So I could say, let's get back to the mesh basket idea, whether that's a cup or not. I could be like, okay, I hear you that there is a container that could hold a hot liquid. I hear you saying that. But unless I believe that I assent, like, okay, yes, that is a thing in the world, then I would never be able to do anything about it. I'd just be like, well, that's your opinion. Bigfoot. Why you got to make it complicated in here? Bigfoot, exactly. Because you can say, I know you believe in Bigfoot. Cool, but I don't assent to the fact that, like, that's a thing. Now, think about some character in the Bible that had knowledge and assent that that's the way things are, but doesn't have faith in God. Pharaoh. Explain that one. Okay. Okay. But did he, so he had the knowledge about who God was, and did he assent that, like, God was doing something? No, so he didn't actually have knowledge and assent. He had the knowledge. Okay, good, yep. Jonah, explain that one. Right, ran away. Judas, same kind of reason. Balaam, Satan, explain that one. Bingo. So if you have knowledge and assent, you're the same as the devil. Congratulations. By the way, I think this is many American pseudo-Christians. All right, yeah. So in other words, we got a whole bunch of devils in our churches. It's like I hear about Jesus, and I'm like, yeah, Jesus. All right, that's who Jesus is. All right. I don't have any problem with Jesus. I guess you're right about Jesus. And the question is, what's the third thing that you need in order to produce an action with the coffee cup? I now believe you. There's a liquid, there's a container that can hold hot liquid. I know about that thing. Now I agree with you that that thing exists. What do I now need to do in order to perform the action? Nailed it. Trust. That's it. In the case of the coffee cup, what is the act of trust? Oh, putting a drink in it. And then what? Drinking it, picking it up. I have to pick it up and then drink from it. This is a profound act of faith. You almost killed yourself over there because either the cup let you down or you're just learning how to drink. There you go. You didn't trust your bottom lip. And here's the funny thing. This gets back to my point. There's been extended illustration of how all human beings, not just non-Christians or whatever, just human beings, live most of their life by faith. They just pick up a cup and then put liquid in their mouths from the thing. We don't even think about it. We're like, duh. But it's pretty weird when you think about it. You just see this thing. I don't even know what's in here. Right? I'm like, yeah, I'm sure nobody's poisoned this or whatever. There's something in here. And somehow this thing's going to get this thing in my mouth, and then I'm going to drink it. We do that all the time. We take a step because I believe that my foot will hit the ground because the ground is a thing. And then I can transfer my weight to it, which will then propel me forward or backward, or forward and backward if I'm dancing, and that I can catch myself and I'll still stay upright. It's a profound act of, it's like a miracle. If you've ever had vertigo, I got vertigo for the first time 3 weeks ago. I was like, oh, that's it. I am definitely on the back hill, right? I'm slowly sliding towards death, which is helpful. But what was so weird about it is I had never experienced it personally before, and you realize how much of a kind of gyroscope you've got within you without ever thinking about it. Profound acts of faith. This is faith as a concept. Now, let's see what faith looks like, not necessarily as a virtue, but just as a thing, not with coffee cups, but with people in relation to Jesus. How? By looking at a rather interesting individual that we find in Luke chapter 23. Or Luke chapter 23. I want somebody to read for us verses 39 through 43. I'm persuaded that this person has faith, that they have all three of the elements of faith. Somebody's going to read it, you listen to it, and then we're going to walk through them and see if he has these three things. Great, thank you very much. The classic title that this guy gets is what? The thief on the cross. Great. Great. So, does he have knowledge? Yes or no? Great. What is the knowledge that he has? There's a couple things. Jesus Messiah, huh? He's innocent. He has a kingdom. He's going to live again. He's done nothing wrong. This dude knows a lot. What? Oh, how's that? Okay, so what's interesting is that is in the mouth of whom? The other guy. Both of the thieves know things. Jesus doesn't say, shut up, you fool. I can't save myself. I'm stuck up here just like the rest of you. And by the way, could he have saved himself? Yeah, doesn't say it here, but we know from the other Gospels that he totally could have. Plus, he's like God and everything, so he could have done whatever he wanted. Okay, so there's lots of things they know. Have they assented to what they know? Okay, which one has assented to what he knows? They're both thieves. And the answer is both. Now, hold on. Let's think about like the thief who says more things. Why has he? What is the evidence that he has assented to what he knows? Okay. Great. So he's talking to Jesus as if he's not questioning it. He's saying this about Jesus, to Jesus. What else? He asked Jesus to remember him. Okay, good. So he's clearly he's assenting to like that Jesus can do this thing. What else is he doing? Okay. So he's assenting to like his own situation. Great. What's the other thing he's doing? Exactly. He's one of the dopest evangelists in all the New Testament. He's absolutely seeking to persuade the other guy of what is true about Jesus. Now, what about the other guy? Has he assented to the thing he knows about Jesus? Now we have a difference of opinion. I'm going to assert that he absolutely has assented to what he knows. Why? He asked Jesus to save him. He knows that about Jesus. But he doesn't call it into question. He's like, hey, save us. Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's nothing about salvation from sin and death here. It's a jailbreak, exactly. The question is, as the one who's just like, get us off of here, is he trusting in Jesus? No. But the other guy is, right? And it gets back to your phrase. Because he's trusting in Jesus, not just for that moment, but for whatever comes on the other side. Great. Key example of faith. Profound example of faith. This dude's exhibiting more faith than you've probably ever exhibited in your whole life. So it's weirdly weird because we use this guy as like, oh, is he saved or not saved? It's like, if that guy ain't saved, I'm not going to heaven. There's no chance I'm getting in. So, oh, but it was before the cross. Yeah, don't worry about it. He's all about like, so when you go up there, remember me. So that's faith as a concept. But I want to talk about faith as a virtue. That's not different than that, but essentially how we are shaped in faith. So yes, we should have faith, knowledge, assent, and trust in Jesus, but I am willing to stake all of my reputation on the fact that that is not enough. Not in the sense of getting right with God, but for Christian life, we need to continue to grow in faith. When you believe in Jesus, the journey isn't over, the journey's just begun. And we are constantly being trained in the virtue of faith and not the vice of what? What's unbelief? Exactly. Again, if you don't think that Christians are unbelievers, in a sense, you have not pastored for more than 3 weeks. All of us here struggle with unbelief. And so, again, I am put in a situation now, and the question is, which way do I flinch? Do I flinch toward unbelief or toward faith? I hope I flinch toward faith. And the more I flinch toward faith, and the more I pursue faith, the easier I will find it to be faithful. And thus, a person of faith, which I know we use that title as like a Christian or whatever, but a person that is disposed toward faith, hopefully you can see how important this would be for decision making. But first, let's work on faith as a virtue. How do we grow in faith? Now, the main distinction between faith as a concept and virtue, theological virtue, is that we ought to believe that this is something that primarily God works in us. But that we don't just like sit back and we're like, dear God, just, give me some faith. Thanks. And then blame God when we live in disbelief. That's lots of Christians. It's a struggle. Well, I don't exhibit faith because God hasn't given it to me. It's like, well, no, we need to put faith into practice. We need to be growing in faith. We're going to see what the Bible has to say about faith. Again, I want to derive this from the Bible, and I know that we're reading very short passages today, but I hope that I have gained enough goodwill with you that you know I'm not just proof texting some strange verse. And if you think I'm wrong about this, because the context would say otherwise, feel free to contradict me at any time. It would be great. So, let's just turn to a passage, and we're going to ask, what do we learn about faith? Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6. Somebody read it. What do we learn about faith? Great. What do we learn about faith? You need it to please God. Great. Could we say something even stronger than that? What could we say that's even stronger than that? It's impossible to please him. It's not it's hard. If you don't have this, you cannot please God. Oh, this sounds super important. Okay? What else do we learn about faith here? Yes. It's connected to drawing near to God. It's not just like this magic fairy dust that falls out of the clouds on us. It's part of drawing near to God. What else? It's rewarded. Why is that so beneficial? Yeah, right. We're back to the cup full of candy, right? We like rewards, and this is not just something that we simply do because it's right. It's part of it. What? What do you mean? Exactly. Because we could have this idea that I should have faith so God doesn't punish me. But Hebrews goes, no. You should have faith because it's impossible to please God. And he rewards. So then it's like, well, now there's all the reason in the world to have faith and to pursue faith. Somebody had their hand raised. Yes. Right. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. See, the context only furthers the point that this isn't like where everybody's just chilling, having brunch on Sundays. Right? You should have faith. And everybody's like, yeah, faith. We're having faith Sunday. Everybody's like, cool. Let's go play at the park. It's in the midst of persecution. And he's saying to those people in that situation, if you don't have faith, you cannot please God. It's impossible. But God rewards those who draw near him. So we don't do it because we're scared of God. We do it because God blesses the ones who have faith. But now all of a sudden, faith is not just knowledge, assent, and trust. I already did that. I, quote unquote, gave my life to Christ, whatever that means. Back then, I don't know if you've read the Gospels, but Jesus doesn't care about the day you made a decision to follow him. He doesn't care at all. What he cares about is whether you've made a decision to follow him today. That's what he cares about. I'm glad that some people go like, I was saved on day X. 44 years ago. It's like, cool. Now, what are you doing today? And they're like, well, I'm just counting the days. Jesus is not happy with you. It's about the life of faith and pursuing faith. And we've only looked at one Bible verse. Shoot, we could do this all day. Let's look at another passage, and see what this adds to it. James chapter 2. Verses 14 to 19. Somebody read this one out loud. What do we learn? What do we add to our understanding of faith here? James 2, verses 14 to 19. Sure, we'll stop there. These are one of those passages where you're like, hold on, Jeremy, this is the one for the Catholics. We don't read this one. What do we learn about faith here? It's active. What do you mean by that? We live it out. Like we can live it out? We're required to. Ooh. Are you telling me, sir, I don't even know who you are you telling me there are requirements for the Christian life? Absolutely. And one of the requirements is that we work out our faith. You go, no, it's faith or works. James goes, no, sorry. It is faith producing action. Duh. It's not that hard. See, now I've reconciled like Protestants and Roman Catholics, bringing everybody together. Just, it's not that complicated. What else do we learn about faith? Ooh. Why is that important? Death is kind of an important thing. This is not like how to be like Disciple of the Month award. Now, this is important on the back of Hebrews 11 because Hebrews 11 is like, there is great reward in this. There's blessing in this. You also need James. It's like, by the way, life and death is on the line. Oh, this is a serious thing. Shoot, I better get after this. What else do we learn about faith? Okay, it's more than just belief. What do you mean by that? Okay, yeah. Right, yeah, it's like, good, you believe? You've officially achieved the level of a demon. Good job. Sir? It's supposed to be useful. What do you mean by that? Yeah, and what are those purposes in this passage? Yeah. This is the thing. You know what faith doesn't always have to do? Move mountains. Just has to move your butt off the couch to go bring somebody a meal. I believe faith moves mountains too. But what's so interesting about this is that faith without works is there. We go, what works? It's like, oh, we need a new reformation. Where it's like, no, you just need to love children. That's a lot of what faith is. It is God's work in us. Drawing near to him brings great benefit. Don't do it, it's death. It's not apart from works. It is faith working itself out in very regular ways. This is the virtue of faith in us. Which, by the way, side point, because I'm amongst ministry leaders, do you have, and this isn't like a yes or no thing, but I'm just asking you an evaluative question. Do you have moments in the life of your church where you celebrate the virtue of faith at work in your people in the very basic and mundane things of life? At a prayer meeting or a congregational meeting where you're just, maybe it's a testimony time or you're highlighting a couple people. It's easy to highlight the missionary. I was a missionary, so I can bag on missionaries. Like the missionary who's over there serving those people. Of course, those people are like usually darker skinned than I am and speak a different language than I am, so they're foreign. And And I served in a very rough part of Nicaragua, and it was weird because people kind of deified me, and I was having to say, like, but you serve in the nursery. You're getting the big house in heaven. Because believe me, it would take an extraordinary amount of faith for me to serve in the nursery. So are you finding moments to celebrate what the ordinary ways of people working out their faith are in the life of your church? To say, like, see, faith is at work amongst us. We want to pray for the people who are doing this and celebrate this. And be oriented toward faith because I see the virtue of faith working out in your life. The ancient philosophers were really big on this, that the only way that I can become virtuous is by seeing virtue at work in somebody else. I can't just like read books or think about it, but I actually have to see faith at work, because this is really important, especially like a new Christian, because like, okay, what do I do now? And yeah, you should give them resources or whatever, but here's one big thing you can do. You come over to my house and hang out. Why? So you can see what being a Christian's like. The question is, what would they see if they came over to your house? That point was completely for free. By the way, you're like, well, I can't have people in my house because I yell at my kids. That's super important. They need to see that you're vicious in order to then see you repent and turn towards virtue. Some of the most profound moments of Christian discipleship in my home have taken place when I have acted wrongly and then repented and been like, that was not the pursuit of virtue. That was the opposite of that. And I need to tell you that in public. Like, if you really want to weird out new Christians or unbelievers, do that. No, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. We don't have to do this. No, it's not okay. That's why we're doing this. There's lots more we could see. I just want to look at one more passage and then think for 10 minutes about what this means for bioethics. Acts chapter 26. Acts chapter 26, verses 15 to 18. Somebody read it. Acts 26, verses 15 to 18.
Open their eyes so that they may turn from darkness to light, and from the power of Satan to God, that they may receive the forgiveness of sins and a place among those who are sanctified by faith in me.
What do we learn about faith here? Paul's recounting his testimony, but it ends in this way, talking about faith. What do you learn about faith in this little section? There's a sanctifying element. In other words, faith is continually, for Paul, at work in people. It's not I had faith, I did the faith thing. Paul's actually at work in order to see faith grow. Who's the me of verse 18? Jesus. Friends, our faith is not just kind of like in, quote unquote, God. Faith is directed towards an object, it's towards a person. His name is Jesus. So I'm not just trying to get people to kind of have faith in a higher power. It is the creator of everything who has manifested himself in Jesus. I know that because of the work of the Holy Spirit, who's bringing me alive and working faith in me. You go, okay, this is cool. It's great. I'm convinced. I hope you're persuaded that, like, I need to train my people in faith, celebrate how we're being formed in faith, oriented in faith to the end. But what does this have to do with bioethical decision making? Well, the virtue of faith is hugely important because when a situation like the one I read at the beginning hits us, you and I are tempted to place our faith in anything else than God. Give me an example of what we might be tempted to place our faith in. Yeah, doctors and surgeons. Why would we put our faith in them? And by the way, is there a certain sense in which we should put our faith in them? Yeah, right? I mean, yes, we should put our faith in them in the sense of what? They know what they're doing. That's right. This one point's totally for free. What's really funny is we freak out about who our doctors are, but we don't freak out about who our pastors are today. The reason why is because we think that doctors can do us great harm, but pastors can't do jack. Stanley Hauerwas has got some great stuff on that if you want to follow that one up. Again, that one was for free. I have to put my faith, I'm putting my hands or my body in the hands of this doctor. So that's good and necessary. So in what way do we wrongly put our faith in doctors? It is to some degree in their hands, right? But you're saying that there's a wrong sense of that. In what sense is it wrong? So they have the final authority. They know everything. They have more power than God does. That's right. Why? Because God's up there, and this dude's got a knife in his hands. Here's something you need to know about Christian doctors. The ones, and I've pastored a lot of Christian doctors, and I do bioethical consultations with doctors and stuff. They really struggle to believe they're not God. And they have to work the virtue of faith big time. Because in some sense, the life of another is in their hands. And yet, and there is nothing that is more powerful than, quote unquote, saving a life. That is, for doctors, especially for surgeons, there's a reason why they're like jerks a lot of the time. It's because they're superhuman to some degree. They can fix people. They can break their bodies apart and put them back together, tear them open and sew them back up. It's super cool what they can do. And we should appreciate it and thank God for that. But there is this sense in which we just think that they're gods. In modern medicine, this is a particular problem. This is why I don't believe in progress when it comes to medicine. I believe in advance. The reason why is because with every advance in medical technology, the world gets significantly more complicated. Let me give you an example. He's like, I don't know what he's talking about. You can't pull the plug if there's no electricity. The minute you have electricity, bioethical decision making gets 10 million times harder. Because you don't have to take anybody off a ventilator if there is no ventilator. And the minute you put somebody on a ventilator, the question becomes, when do we take them off the ventilator? So we need the virtue of faith to not put our faith unduly in doctors. Where else might our faith be wrongly directed in a bioethical crisis? Money. Why? You fix any problem with money. If you just chuck more money at it, then we can fix this thing. Now, we do need money, right? But money is the root of all kinds of evil because it's so easy to believe that if I just had enough, I could have saved him. Or I saved him because I had enough. Oh. And then all of a sudden it goes, now we need more money. And if we just had all the money, we could save everybody. And then you start making sex robots. You really do. You fix it all if we just had more money and technology and just built it all. What else is our faith wrongly put in? Yes? Why? Exactly. Yes. Now, is there a sense in which, similar to doctors, we have to have faith in ourselves? In the sense of like, I can make a decision. I must make a decision. And I shouldn't be paralyzed in fear. I can make a decision. Again, this gets back to time out. To help you see how all the virtues are necessary, I need the virtue of courage. I don't need the virtue of fear. Knowledge. I need the virtue of hope in that moment because I have to make a decision, but I will be paralyzed in fear, which is the virtue of courage, or the vice of courage. It's the opposite of it. I need faith in myself in the sense of I can do this, but if I take too much of it, then who saved the person? Me. Because I made the right decision. Or, you know what's really bad? When you make the wrong decision. Now, it's only wrong because they didn't live. And all you were doing was trying to make the best of a bad situation. But if your faith is placed in yourself, you will be driven to the point of despair and suicide. And I've seen it happen more than once because people believed that they were the arbiters of somebody else's life and they made the wrong decision. I don't know if you've ever had to pull the plug or be with people who have had to pull the plug. That's a big, broad category for remove the ventilator or remove some kind of life support, remove the feeding tube. It is one of the most excruciating, painful processes in all of life. Only available to us because of the advances in technology that have been significantly beneficial for some people. But it's also been the thing that has blown families apart, blown marriages apart, which is why we don't need to have faith just in that moment, but we need to be pursuing faith now for when those kinds of moments come so that we can try and help people make decisions. Because here's the thing, the virtue of faith is not going to make the decision for you. Faith won't pull the plug. You have to. I have to. But the question is, am I able to pull the plug or not in faith? What they're going to call you asking about is, should I pull the plug or not? The doctors are asking me. And what's so helpful about the virtues is you go, well, I want to help you try and make that decision, but I want to talk to you about faith first. Because here's the thing, with two couples in the same exact scenario, all the way down to the condition, prognosis, 10 doctors, blah, 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 both of them have to make a decision. Do we pull the plug? Both couples Christians. Both couples could pull the plug. One of them virtuously, and one of them viciously. It doesn't really matter if you pull the plug or not at the end of the day. What really matters is what was going on behind the decision to pull the plug or not. Again, faith doesn't pull the plug for you. But I hope you can begin to see how these virtues cultivated today, right now, in yourself and your people, will help you become the kinds of people that can help you make the right kinds of decisions when impossible situations come our way, and they will keep coming our way in the realm of bioethics. Thank you for your time and for your interaction. This was super fun. I hope this was helpful for you. If you've got questions after this, then I'm happy to take them, but I know it's lunchtime, and some of you are like, can you just stop talking so I can go eat a hamburger? So let me pray for you, for us, and we'll be dismissed. God, we live in a very complicated time, especially when it comes to bioethics. We always have been born, we have always lived, and we have always died as humanity in a fallen world. And the advances in technology have made it so some of us can live significantly longer. I have no doubt that there are those who are in this room with us today who are only alive because of advanced medical technology. And we thank you for those advances, but we have just seen the tip of the iceberg of how complicated our world is with the advances that we have. And so would you help us to not get lost in the morass of deciding what we should do and forget that we do know, despite all of the complicated things, the kinds of people we should become. Help us to become the kinds of people that you want us to be, and help us to train our people to be the kinds of people that you want us to be. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.